Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for welcoming me today. I'm happy to be back with you guys. I love speaking to your congregation and all the support that you provided to us here in the cannabis advocate community. Again, my name is Kandice, and I had the wonderful introduction today, but just to remind you, I'm the executive director and founder of Orange County NORML. If you could please put my slides up on the screen. All right. And as you guys can see today, I'm going to be talking about insights into new cannabis legislation in California, and then also just a quick and just some information about new updates to the Compassionate Release Act, which pertains to federal cannabis offenders, which actually would be all prisoners in the federal prison system, but this is just pertaining to those sentenced I'm going to talk about for cannabis offenses. So just a little bit of overview about the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. It's an organization that was founded in 1970. There's a national, there's a state, and there's also a local chapter. I'm the founder of our local chapter. We were founded in 2003. That means that we just celebrated our 20-year anniversary. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're primarily focused on educational services. So that means that we speak to media, we speak to students. We also just recently started to speak to more researchers at universities. We also speak at city council meetings, at planning commission meetings, and other types of meetings advocating for consumers, for patients, and also educating them on the history and different factors that might come into play when they're making their decisions. And we also speak at a lot of community events and different speaking engagements. And I just want to remind you guys that I'm not actually an attorney, so please don't consider this any kind of legal advice. Next slide, please. So I wanted to give you guys some information about two exciting laws that actually go into effect this year. These two laws were actually not just passed this current year, but the year previous. And our state actually gave our state governments and employers, a whole year to actually put these laws into place and to prepare for these laws. And so they just went into effect January 1st. So this first law is something that we've been working on for more than 12 years. We've had the ability in California to use cannabis as a medicine for 25 years, and then the ability to use it as a recreational substance since 2016, so for a very long time. But unfortunately, we haven't been able to be protected as in the workplace. We've tried different avenues. We actually had it passed in both houses, and it was actually in front of the governor when we had Arnold Schwarzenegger in power, but he vetoed it. So we almost had it past the post, but it was denied. And we've tried every year until then, but didn't make it past it until just recently. So we finally now have workplace protection. So what this means under AB 2188 is that employers now may not refuse to hire, they cannot fire us, and they cannot penalize cannabis consumers based off the results of a hair or urine test for the off-the-job use of cannabis. So that what that means is that people cannot come to work intoxicated or impaired from the use of cannabis. But if you're using cannabis on the weekends, when you're not on the job, then they cannot discriminate us for that, which they should not be. And when you're looking at urine and hair test results, those tests really they go far back, and they can show like whether you've been using cannabis, not like currently, but whether you used it, weeks or months, in the past, which, that does not actually show current impairment, but far back in your history. So that's why they now made those types of tests not allowable under law. So employees cannot be impaired in the job, as it says here, and they've now changed that the only ways that employers can actually show current or test for current impairment while at the job is using an oral swab, like inside your mouth, or they can use a performance test, which means that they have to actually set when they have to actually have an employee take the test when they are not when they're sober, and then if they think a person's intoxicated, they can have that person take that same performance test on a computer, and they can compare those test results to say, you took this test when I thought you were sober, and then now you're taking it, and the performance is showing that, you're currently impaired, and so you need to go home. And then another way that they can try to prove impairment is they can try to have the employee take a blood test. So those are the ways that they can prove current impairment, but they can't force the employee to take a urine or a hair test. But this law actually does exclude certain types of employees. It excludes the building and construction union, and that is because when we were in the state government, those two unions came out strongly against this law, and so in our negotiations, we said, okay, we're going to exclude these two unions because you feel very strongly that this is a safety consideration, and so this law will not protect those that are employed in the building and construction trades. Also, other safety-sensitive job positions are excluded, like bus drivers, airplane pilots, types of employees that we don't necessarily want to be, using cannabis. Those are definitely excluded. And also other jobs, like federal jobs, like transportation, federal agencies, militaries, those aren't protected. But this does protect a great number of people that have been using cannabis. A lot of people are afraid to report workplace injuries because they don't want to be triggered with the drug test. A lot of people are afraid to move up in their career, to take, to try to improve their lives, provide better for their family because they are afraid of having to take a drug test. So this provides a lot of opportunity for our California workplace. Also, in the meantime, another law was passed, Amendment 700, SB 700, which actually prohibits employers from even asking if you've used cannabis in your prior history, which is a great thing. And so this will provide a lot of opportunity for our California cannabis consumers. So something that we've been working for a long time for, and we're very happy to actually finally have this in place. Next slide, please. Another law that we're very happy to finally have put in place, and again, California counties and cities have been given a whole year notice to get this in place. As you can see here on the chart on the right, you can see on this chart, and this is actually, this has slightly been updated. I couldn't find a new chart. The current number is 60%, not 61, but 60% of counties in California currently prohibit retail stores or retail delivery licensing in their jurisdiction. And only 40%, not 39, but 40% allow it. So what that means, even though it seems like cannabis access is widespread across California, we still have a lot of areas that are cannabis deserts. What this means is that a lot of black market or unregulated cannabis providers have filled in those areas. And that's why we have a lot of the problems that we have today, where the regulated market hasn't been able to thrive like the state had wanted to. So that's why they passed this law, SB 2286, and what it actually does is it requires the cities to remove their current bans. And what it requires is the cities to allow at least for medical delivery. So they cannot have a complete ban on cannabis. So it gave them a whole year to remove their absolute bans on cannabis. So this only pertains to retailers that are authorized to engage in the sales of medicinal cannabis to patients. So it doesn't, so this is the most conservative method that they can go. They didn't say that you have to have at least, a recreational dispensary, a storefront. They said you have to have at least a medical delivery. So it's the most conservative route that they decided to go. And actually, last year, the Department of Cannabis Control, which regulates the dispensaries, offered a grant program which they gave cities money to go forward with this program. If they didn't have the money to research your licensing and to fund the city government to do this, they actually gave money. And they're actually looking forward this year to also provide more grant money to help the cities go forward. The goal for this program is to reduce the demand in the illicit market, to expand the access in these cannabis deserts, and to protect consumers from the untested, unregulated products, and to fill in this gap in the cannabis desert. So this is another thing that our cannabis community has been working forward for many years. So these two laws are something that we're really, really excited in, and this will also provide a great number of jobs and opportunities in these markets as well. Many of these markets, especially Kern County, have millions and millions of people who need access for medical and other reasons. So I'm very excited about these two laws. These have been projects that California NORML has been working on for a great many years. Next slide, please. All right, and then before I get to a little bit more good news, I did want to highlight some folks that are unfortunately still serving time in the federal justice system. Currently, there are still 2,000 individuals that are serving time for federal sentences for nonviolent cannabis convictions. The first individual here is someone that I talked to you guys about last year. His name is Parker Coleman. He's one of the folks that we're still focusing our energy and attention to. Parker Coleman actually, during his trial, didn't actually have anyone that testified that he sold them marijuana. He was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison for marijuana trafficking and money laundering. He got an additional 30 years for a nonviolent firearms offense. These firearms weren't even his, they were other people's, but he still was given an additional 30 years for them. The reason that he got such a hard sentence was because he actually refused to turn state's evidence against other individuals. He got the longest and the hardest sentence than other people. All of his other co-defendants have now been released. He's the only person still in jail. His co-defendant, Corvain Cooper, started a cannabis brand called 40 Tons, a social equity brand. They're using that money to help gather resources to try to release Parker Coleman. He is just a really nice guy. It's a really, really sad case. He has a de facto life sentence. He was incarcerated in 2010. He still has 47 years of his sentence. So at this point, he has a de facto life sentence. If he's released at 85, which is pretty much the life expectancy of someone on the outside, but the life expectancy of someone behind bars is less than someone in the free world. So he will, if not released, he will die in prison. So for something that he did not hurt anybody else, this young man, if he's not freed, will never see the light of day, which is a travesty of justice. So we have continued to file petitions for his release, and we will continue to do so. I have cards in the back table there too, if anybody wanted to send a well wish and let him know that we're continuing to support him. He's one of the individuals, so please do send him a message of support. Next slide, please. Another individual who is a model prisoner is a gentleman named Edwin Rubis. He was sentenced to 40 years. This gentleman actually was a little bit more involved in his case. He was prosecuted, for conspiracy though, but he did have a little bit larger weight. But his case involved transportation of 8,000 pounds of cannabis. He already served 23 years of his sentence, though, and he still has about 8 years left of his sentence. He, though, has taken full advantage of his time behind bars. He has taken every college course available. He has earned his master's degree. He has earned his PhD. He has taken religious studies. He's a model prisoner, and he's taught in ESL courses and religious studies to other prisoners as well. He's, as you can see, involved in musical courses, and he's also filed numerous petitions for release. Another prisoner that we're trying to get released. He does not belong to be still in behind bars. So another gentleman that we're trying to get released is Edwin Rubis, and we have a card back there for him as well. Another gentleman that doesn't do anyone justice being behind bars, he deserves to be freed. Next slide, please. And then another gentleman, Sanford Johnson, from all accounts, he is just one of the nicest, most likable guys behind bars. He's a Southern boy, sweet as pie. He was convicted of conspiracy to distribute marijuana and money laundering in Florida back in 2017. A little bit of good news just right before I sent this presentation and when I was getting updates, I did see that his release date was just updated. So it looks like the Can Do Clemency may have just gotten some sort of petition for an early release. So although he was sentenced to 12.5 years and that he might have been, it looks like it might have gotten moved up, so he might, it looks like he might be getting released later this year, which is amazing. We're always hopeful that we can get him out earlier than that. He's another guy that has completed extensive rehabilitative programs. You can read more about him online, but he is just one of those guys that is just, you know, his mother is very sick and he wants to get out and be able to spend some time with her before she passes away, and he is, you know, so apologetic for what he's done in the past and has just spent his time trying to help others. And, you know, he's not a threat to society, and I don't think that he should have spent any time behind jail, and that we could, you know, find a different way to handle these kind of marijuana crimes, and no one should be behind jail for cannabis. Next slide, please. And then another gentleman is Jerry Hayman, who was sentenced to 10 years for the distribution and conspiracy to possess 1,000 kilos of cannabis with intent in Virginia. Prior to this conviction, he was actually an NCAA football player with a promising future. Currently, he is incarcerated in Lompoc with a maximum release date of October 2027. He is working on a petition for early release, and another individual that we're working with to try to get him released. Another individual taking advantage of every rehabilitation program and working to help others as well. I also have another card for all of these individuals in the back as well, if you want to help support and let them know that we're thinking of them. And then all these individuals were sent to me by Luke Scarmazzo. And so Luke Scarmazzo, I talked to you guys about last year, sorry. Luke Scarmazzo was one of the last medical marijuana providers sentenced to federal prison. He was operating a medical cannabis dispensary in Modesto during the crackdown by the DEA. His daughter was 5 years old when he was sentenced. And I wanted to update you guys that in February, about 3 months after I spoke to you guys last time, he was finally released after serving 14 years, almost 15 years of his 22-year sentence, which is absolutely amazing. He was notified when he was actually in solitary confinement that his petition from the Last Prisoner Project was finally granted, and he just couldn't even believe that it actually happened. He was so happy working with the Last Prisoner Project, Weldon Project, and actually the company I worked for, Glass House Group, all of us working together. He was finally released, and he actually got a job working for Glass House Group, and now he's leading our Justice Impact program. So actually now he has a job where he gets to actually help other incarcerated cannabis offenders. And if you want to go to next slide. So what he gets to actually do is he gets to work full-time educating people about the number of incarcerated nonviolent cannabis offenders that are still behind bars. So what he does is he reaches out to those that would be eligible. He lets them know about the steps that they need to take. He supports them. He educates, like I said, the public about the number of nonviolent cannabis offenders that are still incarcerated. He supports those nonviolent cannabis offenders who are still incarcerated by finding them legal support and also post-conviction relief. He helps them file clemency petitions, the CR motions, habeas corpus, and et cetera. He also partners with the Weldon Project and the Mission Green to bring awareness, support. And then if you know anybody that might be eligible or interested, he also has a form here that you guys can send in, and then he can help link you guys up. So he really gets to now help others, which is really great, get release. And he stays really connected with those folks. And so all the individuals that I just mentioned are guys that he stays connected with and that he's met in the system. And so a lot of guys, when they get released, it was a really bad period in their life and they want to really just kind of turn a leaf and move forward. But he's one that really wants to stay connected and make sure that everybody that's still there follows him and is released as soon as they can get. So I'm really, really honored to be able to stay connected and to work with him and to make sure that, that we get all these guys out. And I just wish that there is more that I could have done more and that none of those guys, that no one had to serve any time. Next slide. Okay, and then if we could see if this works, he recorded a little video for you guys.
Luke Scarmazzo, and I represent Glasshouse, Reform, and Profit brands. And I want to thank the Unitarian Church for their support of all nonviolent cannabis offenders. And please, keep supporting companies like 40 Tons, Reform, and Profit brands.
So thankful for you guys. Yeah, so that was Luke Scarmazzo. And what he pointed out was Reform, 40 Tons, and Profit. And so those three brands are actually social equity brands. And what that means is California has actually come up with a social equity program. And what they do is they give assistance and an arm up to priorly convicted cannabis offenders who want to enter the California cannabis market, and they actually provide them assistance filling out applications. They lower their application fees, and they actually give them they give them a prior, they put them in the front of the line in the application, the line, I guess, they put them in the front of the queue, I should say. So they want to make sure that those that have been disadvantaged and that have actually, been helping the marijuana, helping support the cannabis movement and have been serving the patients from the beginning, have been putting in their time and paying their dues, that they actually get to be involved in the cannabis movement and that they've helped build. And so those three brands, 40 Tons, Reform, and the Profit, those three brands that he mentioned, that he wants to make sure that people know that those brands are supported by those that have paid their dues and that, that people know to support those brands. Next slide. Oh, okay, perfect. All right, and so the reason that Luke was actually released was because updates to the Compassionate Release Act. And so the Compassionate Release Act actually provides reasons that an attorney can file that a person needs to be released or excused from their sentence. So of course, I'm not an attorney, so excuse me. But the amendment revises, especially, and so there was previous Compassionate Release Act reasons, and then they've actually amended that and expanded that. So this amendment revises the compassionate release policy and expands the list of extraordinary and compelling reasons in 5 ways to better account for the plain language. And so these 5 ways are medical circumstances. So, a person, has cancer, or they're getting, elderly, they need, extra care that the jail system is not able to provide, or it's getting more costly. These are ways that an attorney can argue that a person needs to be released. Or the modified family circumstances. Perhaps we have this person locked up in federal jail for a marijuana charge and they have 3 kids. Why are we taking this father out of a family when he should be home with his family supporting them, and we're leaving this mother to raise a family by themselves? This is something that an attorney should be able to argue. So it gives them these reasons now. Another category is a victim of abuse. Perhaps the jail is not able to protect this person and they're being victimized, they're being, raped or something like that, and we're not able to protect them. It now gives their attorney the ability to argue this in court and to get that person released for this reason. Another one would be other reasons. So it now opens and broadens their arguments to have this person's released. And then the category I think that gives, us the most power, especially in Parker Coleman's case, where he has a de facto life sentence, is this unusually long sentences. Why does Parker Coleman have a 60-year sentence, a de facto life sentence? So, permitting consideration of a non-retroactive change in law and a narrow sentence circumstances. So, this provides a lot of leverage for us to get a lot of these guys released. You know, there's no reason why we have 2,000 people in jail for nonviolent cannabis offenses. All these folks should be back with their families, helping to provide for their children, their mothers, their fathers that are growing old, supporting their families and their communities. They don't need to be, you know, draining our economy and having us, you know, provide for them. And, you know, there's nothing good that happens in jail, but we just create, you know, criminals learn to be worse criminals, and they get victimized and abused, and they should be back in society, you know, helping to provide for their families. So I love that we have, you know, these amendments to the Compassionate Release Act, and we have advocates like Luke back out in society that can help get these folks back out with us. So next slide, please. So what you can do to be active and support reform is you can definitely write a prisoner. Just keep in mind that there's definitely some things that you cannot send to prisoners. Do not send greeting cards with like stickers and glue and glitter and things like that. You know, they obviously don't want those things. You know, they never know what's stuck to the back of them. You know. Also probably make sure that you read like guidelines on whatever kind of facility you're sending them to that could be different. Another good thing that you could do is share their story or online, share their story or online petition on social media. That's great in getting attention out. You could ask friends to write letters as well and share their story. You could also, I just learned this recently, I thought it was really cool, is you could order a POW or a prisoner, a magazine subscription. I saw that on the Last Prisoner Project. They don't not only read it themselves, but they share it with their other incarcerated friends. You can also put money on a prisoner's books. A lot of time in the federal prison system, they feed them enough to keep them alive, but not enough to keep them thriving and healthy. The quality of the food there is not good, and so there's a lot of organizations like the Weldon Project that help give them enough, give them some money so they can get more food. Another thing you could do is sign an online clemency petition. And another thing you can do is you can call your representative. You see an offender or a prisoner that's been sentenced in your area. That goes very far as to make that additional call. All right, next slide, please. And then I just wanted to put on this next slide here just some logos and information. So on the top is those 3 social equity brands that we mentioned that are founded by recently released cannabis offenders. That was the Prophet, and then Reform, and then you can see here Weldon Angelos. He was actually sentenced to 15 years, and then he was released after 13. And then 40 Tons, which was Corvain Cooper, Parker Coleman's co-defendant. And then on the bottom here is 3 social justice reform organizations: Freedom Grow, Last Prisoner Project, and Mission Green. Those are 3 great organizations to get involved with and get more information. And then next slide is just a little bit of more information about me and where you can get a hold of me. But yeah, I really appreciate you guys having me here today, and I will be around afterwards for more questions and to give you guys some more information. But thank you so much again.